Welcome to the March Look-See. Things are pretty intense right now, and that is likely to continue for a while, even as clarity and a sense of cooperation and coming together are moving through people everywhere over the next few months. That's a good thing. So I addressed only a few topics and bits of news this month and focused a lot on my frustration with Trump, Iran, Israel, and what the heck those fools were doing. However, the insight that came with that focus was surprising and intense. But let's start with a keyword for the month. And the keyword I got this month was the word Hamlet, Hamlet. And that's a word that could be heard as, could refer to Shakespeare's tragic play, Hamlet. Perhaps it refers to a small village, and it could refer to a cut of ham, of meat, a piece of ham. So the word ham itself, Ham, is an old word. I think it's German. And it originally meant crooked. Crooked. So this could apply to our world in several ways right now. If you think of the word crooked as similar in meaning to the word corrupt. For example, he was a crooked cop. We have a crooked Congress, a crooked financial system, a crooked medical system, and so on. Alternatively, if you look at this keyword as a description of the path we are on, it could mean that our path has many twists and turns, and we cannot see around the next bend in the road, let alone see the outcome we're creating. Then there's Shakespeare's play, Hamlet, which is a tragedy that ends with the destruction of an entire royal family, elite family, and a change in the rulership of their country. Ouch. That kind of hits close to home in the US. And finally, if we use this word as a predictor of what our future looks like, it points to small villages and local communities in out-of-the-way places. As we go through the next month or so and things keep zigzagging in crooked, unexpected ways, remind yourself that nothing moves in a straight line or has straight lines and sharp angles. Nothing in the natural world at all. So maybe it's time for us to learn to see the beauty in natural forms and naturally occurring events. So now let's look and see what's happening in our world. Number one, the United Arab Emirates released a statement condemning the attack by Iran on their territory, an attack that killed one person. And in their statement, they said, quote, "Such acts represent a dangerous escalation and a cowardly act that threatens the safety and security of civilians and undermines stability." And my instant reaction to this was, oh, no, my friend, you shouldn't be surprised. It is always the governments of the world that threaten the security and safety of citizens. People everywhere want to live in freedom and peace, raise their children, work at something meaningful, and take care of the land they live on and themselves. It is you, power-hungry people, in the governments that are a constant threat and disruption to people, animals, plants, and the land itself. Number two, perhaps you saw videos of farmers and their tractors coming from everywhere across Europe last year, converging on Brussels, putting it under siege. The roads into Brussels were blocked, and it appeared that the farmers were ready to stay for a while. I think we were seeing the modern version of farmers with pitchforks, but this time it was farmers with tractors. Farmers in various countries across the EU have staged protests here and there over the past months, but now they have organized themselves. Europe has lost 4 million farms, all of it due to increasing rules, regulations, restrictions, paperwork, and crushing debt. If you look at the big picture, the message to people is that the government is trying to get rid of the very things needed for survival, like food. I was looking ahead to this summer and saw that there are more of these farmer with tractor protests, but this time it is about the price of fuel. Let me say it again. It is time to begin growing your own food. This applies to the people in Europe, England, and the Americas. Someone in each family needs to be given the job of being the gardener, the farmer in residence, so to speak. Not only will you have food security, you will discover the power of real food. Number 3. Recently, I've noticed that videos from weeks, months, or even years ago are being uploaded to YouTube as if they were news stories and current events. Any information about their original publishing date is missing, but if you do a bit of research in that country's major newspapers, or even on YouTube itself, you find reports that the exact situation you thought was today's news actually happened anywhere from 2 months to 2 years ago. Why would this be happening? There are several possible reasons for this. One is that real news, current news, is suffering from blackouts in many areas. This keeps us all in the dark. Another is that it's possible that many of the older videos that caused a lot of consternation, fear, and worry are being reused to keep the consternation and fear high. Someone is using whatever they can to keep everyone on edge. Yet another reason is outright deception. People watch these reposted videos and think they are well informed. They comment as if the reported event is happening today without ever knowing it is something that is long over. They don't realize that their attention has been diverted away from what is actually happening out in the real world. We are already struggling with blatant lies, disinformation, and fake news. The reissued videos are just another layer of distraction, disinformation, and an effort to keep the confusion going. Pay attention, people. Number 4. Did you notice that Donald Trump has ordered an investigation into the deep freeze that occurred all the way down to Orlando, Florida? We had that freeze, I think, a couple of weeks ago. The reports he received said someone was using weather as a war weapon against us. So, does that add fuel to the arguments about whether or not the big storms are being manipulated? Far too many people do not realize that planes are also being used to spray us with chemicals. And plenty of intelligent people who have been told about it dismiss it because they think it is conspiracy theory. Open your eyes, people. Number 5, I was very upset by the February 28th attack on Iran. After stewing and chewing about why we would want a war with Iran, I decided to sit down and think deeply and openly about the whole situation. I started with my first reaction. That's it. I'm done with Trump. He's no better than the rest of those warmongering idiots. What in the world was he thinking? So after sitting with this for a short time, I started wondering, what was he thinking? My thoughts wandered around a bit, and I remember Trump always saying, "Come to the table, let's make a deal." I always treated this kind of invitation as something coming from a guy who loved to make deals. But suddenly the words "come to the table" became central in my mind. I was reminded of the legend of the Knights of the Round Table. The knights kept inviting people to come to the table, lay down their weapons and talk, make agreements, understand one another, stop fighting. Was Trump doing something similar? Had those invitations been an attempt to be a stabilizing force? By insisting that people come to the table and make agreements, had he tried to make them see that there was a better way? What did Trump know that we didn't know? I looked at the globe of planet Earth sitting on my desk, and I turned it so I could see the Middle East. And I had the thought, man, why is there so much chaos there? Then I stopped to do a little research. First, there was Iran, full of beautiful, brilliant people. Their government had been taken over by Muslim clerics in 1979, and they had been a centerpiece of controversy ever since. They suffered a complete currency collapse aggravated by sanctions. They were running out of water, and because of inflations, Iranians needed 1.4 million rials per $1. 1.4 million of their dollars to get one of ours. That is some serious inflation. Next was Turkey. Turkey is 90% Muslim and pretended to be democratic, but it was really adhering to Sharia law. Turkey was suffering from a serious brain drain, a currency collapse, severe inflation at 85%, and their middle class was gone. They were sitting on an earthquake fault line that made a complete wreck out of cities and people's lives from time to time, and they were overflowing with Syrian refugees. Next was Egypt, also 90% Muslim. Egypt was in debt to the eyeballs, and almost half of their revenue was going to interest payments. Inflation was at 38 to 40%, with 60% of the people living in poverty. Their main source of income, tourism, was under threat because of regional instability, and they were slowly failing as a state. Pakistan, 96% Muslim, was a nuclear country needing continuous bailouts from the IMF. They've had 24 bailouts so far in Pakistan. 24. They have a population of 257 million. Wow. And 30% of them are in serious poverty. They are struggling with climate difficulties. They've had some serious flooding. Oh my. And political chaos as the Taliban keep gaining ground. Next was Afghanistan. Afghanistan, 99% Muslim, had already been taken over by the Taliban, who were ultra-repressive Sunnis, following a strict ideology based on their own interpretation of Sharia law. Once the religious hardliners were installed, the state barely functioned. Instead of dealing with this, they threw women out of the workforce and severely limited education for females. They prioritized Sharia compliance over everything else. And the result was economic collapse, sanctions, and a serious brain drain. 65% of the population in Afghanistan is now in poverty, and they are on the edge of famine. Lebanon, a ghost of what it once was, is about 70% Muslim. Lebanon is dealing with economic annihilation and an 80% poverty rate after the collapse of their currency. Their government defaulted in 2020. The brain drain was severe, and they have had a working government only occasionally. Hezbollah, a proxy of Iran, was slowly taking over, and migration to Europe has been ongoing. Syria is 85% Muslim, and 90% of the Syrian population is in complete poverty. Complete poverty. Wow. They were taken over by rebels after the collapse of Assad's regime, and they have suffered an economic collapse and an infrastructure collapse. Millions have left and migrated into Europe, putting great pressure on European countries. The Sudan, just south of Egypt and once the biggest country in Africa, is 97% Muslim and has been caught in a civil war that has displaced millions. They are suffering from famine conditions and have no water and no sanitation. Tens of thousands are dead, and the country has fragmented into warlord fiefdoms. Those who can travel keep migrating to Egypt, putting great pressure on Egypt. Libya is a completely failed state. It's 97% Muslim and has been lost in conflict and economic instability. Half the population is in deep poverty. At this point, I stopped and sat thinking. The story in every one of these countries was the same. They make up the countries all across the Middle East. It's like, whoa. When governments prioritized religious rules instead of making sure their people had food, water, and other basic needs, their economies collapsed. When religious extremists focused on conformity so crippling that their doctors, engineers, scientists, and academics fled, they made it impossible for the population to pull itself up and out of poverty. When they treated women as second-class people who deserved minimal education and had no say in their own lives, let alone the affairs of business, economics, or governance, they cut off the contribution of half their population. The country lost its balance completely, and human development stalled. Then the whole group fell into rigor mortis of the consciousness. One source I was taking notes from pointed out there's a pattern here. The combination of regressive, repressive religion masquerading as government led to economic collapse, the flight of highly educated and capable people, and the descent into severe poverty, suffering, and even famine. These conditions do not lead to a world of love, beauty, joy, and abundance. They don't empower every individual to become the best and the most they can be. Suddenly, it didn't matter what Trump was thinking. From a very high perspective, he was nothing more than a tool. Yes, he lied. Yes, he misled us. Yes, he made a big mistake in violating international law and would probably be impeached. Yes, he made an unprovoked attack on another country whose nickname was the assassin. Yes, people were hurt or killed. Yes, he caved to Israel. And yes, Israel was running the U.S. courtesy of the groundwork laid by Mr. Epstein. Yes, the war was going to expand, and yes, a lot of destruction was going to occur. In fact, it was already occurring. But the prospect of a week, a month, a year, or 3 years of war suddenly seemed like a reasonable price to pay for the freedom of millions of women from religious, financial, and patriarchal bondage in so many countries around the world. And I'm not talking just about the Muslim religion here. I'm talking about all the religions because they foster patriarchy. The war looked like a necessary price to stop the disappearance of 800,000 children every year, their torture, sexual abuse, and murder. The war seemed like a good price to pay to end the kidnapping and forced organ harvesting of tens of thousands of people in China. It looked like a good way to permanently detach the financial suction tubes from the wallets of billions of people around the globe who fell for the globalist wet dream of unlimited riches, but only for the 1%, while everyone else struggled with endless debt. Suddenly, from that very high perspective, it looked like the universe was using some deeply flawed individuals who thought they knew what they were doing when they were really only tools of the universe, who would inadvertently start a war that released millions of people from the prisons of a religious, governmental, and financial system that needed to be taken down in order for humanity to evolve to the next stage of human development. Somewhere down the road of time, we might see that there was something much bigger, much more powerful than a few greedy men with bombs driving this war. The real goal might be much bigger than a greater Israel, much better than efforts to look good for some midterm elections, and much bolder than petty desires for complete power and control. Perhaps we will see as we move down the road that the universe is using the idea of Armageddon to make a space for our awakening to continue until we wake up one day and discover we have awakened the Christ within, and we are able to generate love, beauty, joy, abundance, and the creative freedom that gives people a chance to flourish, to shine, to transcend the shackles the world was trying to put on them. The real return of Jesus is actually the return of Christ consciousness in those who have awakened. Number 6, there has been lots of talk about the Canadian provinces of Alberta and Saskatchewan seceding from Canada and becoming part of the U.S. I thought this was a lot of talk, and there was no real possibility of this happening. But when I went to look at the future, I was surprised to see that Alberta had indeed become part of the U.S. It moved first and with almost no hesitation to join the U.S. and become the 51st state. Saskatchewan was a little slower and a little more hesitant because of the war in Iran and some uncertainty about aligning themselves with what might be seen as a pariah nation. That's us. There is a better than average chance that Saskatchewan will leave Canada, but as I went into the future a little further, it looked like Alberta and Saskatchewan formed an independent region of their own. The U.S. looked quite different, and I thought it had broken up after or because of the war. There was no talk of a 51st or 52nd state because the U.S. had lost several states already. Number 7. Someone sent me an email celebrating 18 favorite retirement hacks. And I don't usually pay attention to this kind of thing at all, but I thought I'd take a quick look before deleting it. Now, maybe it's just me, but I was shocked at what I saw. Or maybe I should say I was shocked at what I didn't see. I didn't see a single indication that people were looking at the American way of life and questioning what they were doing, how they were living, what they were expecting, and whether or not any of it made sense. A few of the hacks were kind of reasonable. A free quote for a new roof, or a discount on gutter guards. But most of the other hacks were based on the assumptions that we will get old, we will fall apart, we will try to get in a little bit of travel before we die, and we need help compensating for our ignorance and our helplessness. The hacks that bothered me the most were: A, debt is normal. It's not. Debt is a trap that is carefully laid to get you into debt slavery, which then requires that you get a job in one of the big corporations and spend your time, your life, and your energy there. Then you retire and die. B, interest rates are a game, and you can play better by transferring debt among credit cards. Why is it considered normal to be caught in debt and having to play such games? C, erectile dysfunction can just be fixed by pills. No mention of being healthy. And always a continued use of sex as the central focus in life. And it's not. D, walk-in tubs are a great way to stay safe. Again, no mention of being healthy and able to move normally into old age. Why not? E, it's possible to avoid home repairs. Just sign the agreement and you never have to think about home repairs again. Let me tell you, if you own a home, you will have repairs. This hack is completely unrealistic, and who knows what the fine print says that you are agreeing to. F, discounts on hearing aids, as if poor hearing was to be expected. Again, the assumption that physical degeneration is normal. It's just a business opportunity for somebody. G, tax debt is normal. It's not. And someday we're going to realize that the taxes we paid were not only not legal, they were not being spent on anything ethical or that we needed, like good infrastructure. And last, going to McDonald's, Wendy's, or White Castle qualifies as going out to dinner. Who in their right mind thinks this and eats this stuff? To me, all of these hacks tell us that our lives and our minds have been hacked. Those are the real hacks, and they are just making sure you're still on the hook. Number 8. A tarot reading that I put out at the beginning of this month warned that if we went to war with Iran, we might lose our government. If we lose our government, we could be as vulnerable as sitting ducks. Some of the illegals who came in over the southern border during Biden's term would be the duck hunters. And the great danger is the loss of the electrical grid or parts of it. Between those wanting revenge for attacks on Iran, severe storms that also take out parts of the grid, droughts and heat waves, we might be singing this summer, There'll be a hot time in the old town tonight. Heads up there. Number 9, Martin Armstrong wrote a blog that is quite concerning. In it, he reports that the U.S. Congress is pushing legislation that would result in everyone needing to verify their age before being allowed to access information on the internet. Everybody would have to verify their age. He points out that the excuse for this is, oh, we're protecting children from all the bad stuff on the internet. And legislators love to be seen as protecting children, even though we all know what they are doing to children in secret places for very nefarious reasons. Anyway, the hidden result of this age verification rule would be that our conversations on the internet would no longer be private or anonymous. Says Armstrong, it is standard political tactics to bring in children when you want to sell an agenda. Praise the children and nobody can argue. Number 10, our fate has now been completely entangled in Israel's. Unfortunately, the outlook is not good. For those who have not made any effort to get ready, now's the time to do so. A couple of times over the last year or two, I've mentioned that I saw the U.S. being isolated by the world community. No one would talk to us. No one would trade with us or ship anything to us. No one trusted us or had anything good to say about us. Because of U.S. arrogance and the very foolish attack on Iran, we the people are going to pay a steep price. This is the time to assess your food stocks, your ability to get water, to secure a backup source of electricity, and a wood stove. It's time to make sure your shoes, coats, and underwear are in good shape and will last for at least several years without replacement. It is essential that you know how to grow food, how to preserve it, and how to recognize food in the wild. Don't overlook things like wax paper, saran wrap, aluminum foil, and jars with lids. It would also be good to make sure you have a few basic tools, maybe enough oil and filters for equipment maintenance, a little gasoline, a few pieces of lumber, a few spare shingles, some nails and screws, and don't forget the duct tape. Private joke there. We are going into a period in which we will need to draw on some of that Yankee ingenuity you may have heard about in the past. It seems ludicrous that we have such powerful computers, phones, and artificial intelligence at our fingertips, and yet have to deal with the inconveniences wrought by greedy people fighting wars. However, survival is a matter of flexibility and creative thinking. Maybe we all need a little exercise in our ability to flex and create solutions for ourselves. Number 11. Back in the early days of the Industrial Revolution, many people feared the rise of the machines. They were certain machines were going to take over the world, ruin their jobs, and destroy the entire civilization. What happened is that people took over the machines and started using them for everything. Soon there were printing presses, gigantic looms for the weaving of cloth, sewing machines, bicycles, cars, planes, and eventually computers. All of these were useful and made life easier. The machines became the infrastructure that pumped water into houses, made food prep easier, made it easier to grow massive amounts of food for people and animals, burned coal and oil a little more cleanly than smoke and soot from wood, brought electric lights, air conditioning, steamboats, cars, refrigerators, and radios into our lives. Today, we have a similar development happening with AI. AI is new. People are using it for everything. And soon, intelligence will become part of our lives and part of our infrastructure, just like the machines did, making things much easier for all. We will gradually begin to understand that frequency doesn't just carry information, it carries intelligence. This will lead to the ability to tap the intelligence in things, then to manage that intelligence, then to program that intelligence, and then to enhance that program that engages that intelligence. We're already playing with intelligence as infrastructure. Intelligence as infrastructure in the form of smart devices like Alexa. A smart stethoscope is another example. It can detect and diagnose heart conditions almost instantly. Everyone has a private phone, and smartphones still dominate and will continue to dominate as we learn how to be with the power of this tool. There are smart air purifiers that will eventually become the walls of your home and help keep you healthy. There are smart devices that will have artificial intelligence embedded in them that warm up your bed in the winter, cool it in the summer, prevent mold and insects from coming into the house, and change the color of your living room or bathroom walls just by changing the frequency set of the material the wall is made of without destroying its structure. We will have open and unlimited access to the intelligence in everything, from clothing to computers to transport to educational materials and experiences and beyond, way beyond. Scientists have already been able to put an entire computer in a single fiber of clothing. You can even put that clothing through the washing machine. But eventually, they will be able to program the fibers to clean or renew themselves by doing a frequency dump and then a restoration process. So stop worrying about AI and its presence in our lives. Let me repeat. Intelligence is going to become part of our infrastructure in ways similar to the ways that machines and engines of every sort have become part of our infrastructure. Life will be easier. You will need to learn new things, new careers will open up, and the young people looking for opportunities will especially love these opportunities. New forms of business will take shape. New kinds of lifestyles will emerge, and a whole new level of consciousness will be yours to work with. Number 12. Events unfolding in China are teetering on the edge of revolt. The Chinese people, they seem to have lost their fear of the government, and Xi Jinping is being openly criticized as a pig. This has become so embedded in the thinking of the people that they are posting pictures of a pig, making derogatory comments about the pig, and everyone knows who they're talking about. The robes showed me waves of revolt in China happening about the same time the US was breaking up. And I thought both of those changes would be impossible. But here we are. Wow. Number 13. In looking ahead at the summer and the fall, two things keep coming up. One is that I don't see Trump after August. The other is that there may not be any midterm elections in November. I'm not sure what happened to Trump, but the midterms looked like they were postponed. I thought it was because of the war. There was too much chaos, and some areas of the U.S. may not have had electricity, to be able to tally anything. But it looked a lot like Zelensky's position in Ukraine. We can't have an election right now. It was like they were copying Ukraine. Number 14, I still have an old-fashioned radio, an old-fashioned watch with a battery, and I still have no interest in television, although I spend hours on the computer each day watching, listening, thinking, assessing, integrating, and writing about what I see and hear. There have been a lot of changes over the decades, and except for the lies, the tax scams, and the propaganda of our government, the schemes of the financial system, the degeneration of our food system, the ruination of medical and educational systems, and a few other problems, I have to say the people of this world are truly wonderful. Separate yourself. You are not your government. Get clear about who you are. People are amazing. I love it. I love them. I love you. So that's it for this look-see. And for those who are watching or listening for the first time, the look-see is a brief look at what's happening in our world and where the big trends are headed. Reality is not fixed. It's very dynamic, and it changes according to what we're doing with our consciousness. Nothing becomes real until we make it real. We make a choice, we take some kind of action, we put something together, or we take it apart. Those decisive actions are what determine the outcome and the timeline we are on. Of course, once we set something in motion, it takes a lot to make a change or get things going in another direction. And that's exactly the reason for looking ahead. If we don't like the direction things are going, we can make appropriate changes in a timely way, or, let me underline this, prepare for what looks inevitable. Prepare. If we see something we like, we can put some conscious attention on that outcome and help it along. It's important to look around and assess what's happening and where we are going, so we know whether or not we need to do something different. Thank you so much for listening. Keep your eyes open and your wits about you. Keep your antenna up and a smile on your face and in your heart. We'll see you next month. Take care.